Democratic Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams has responded to the outrage she received after posting a photo of her with a group of school children. The kids were masked. She was not. Abrams quickly deleted the viral photo taken at Atlanta's Glenwood School after the backlash. The Abrams campaign put out a statement saying, quote, "It is shameful that our opponents are using a Black History Month reading event for Georgia children as the impetus for a false political attack, and it is pitiful and predictable that our opponents continue to look for opportunities to distract from their failed records when it comes to protecting public health during the pandemic," unquote.
Governor Brian Kemp responded to the photo saying Stacey Abrams wants state government mask mandates for Georgians and their children, but it looks like they wouldn't apply when she's attending a photo op. This comes just days after GOP Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was criticized by the liberal Democrats for not wearing a mask while visiting a grocery store in Alexandria, where there's no mask mandate, so I don't understand why he was not required to wear a mask and thus didn't, and then he had a crazy person yelling at him.
Read the room at him.
But so I was pretty annoyed. So on this Stacey Abrams thing is pretty bad. You know, she's, because all these children are masked as they are 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 years, and she's not wearing a mask. And then actually she said, so she put out a couple statements. So first she said, well, I only took it off so that, you know, like the children could better understand what I was saying. Oh, really? we take off our masks so we're better understood. I wonder if masks inhibit possibly some learning in the classroom.
Right. A teacher should be able to have the same privilege to do that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just ridiculous. And then for her to say, "Oh, how dare they criticize my political? How dare they call out my political stunt as the political stunt?" What is she doing in a school? This is a campaign event. She's reading from her children's book. I mean, come on. So
maybe a commercial event too. It was her book?
It's her children's book. So I thought it was total. I also criticized her on Twitter for this. I thought it was totally fair to criticize her for this. Don't be vocal that children don't need to be wearing masks anymore.
Right. If that was her position, then then that would be different. If she was like, "Look how absurd this is."
Yeah, no, she demanded it. So this is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and so her campaign said she wore a mask to the event, only removed it so she could be heard by students watching remotely. There were some watching remotely, and for a handful of photos on the condition that everyone around her was wearing face coverings. So she demanded everyone else be in a mask. Pretty bad. So
Lena Wen, who became for a long time kind of the Democrats, kind of one of the go-to cable pundit, authorities, has been calling for a lot of these mandates to be lifted.
Yeah, recently. I was shocked. It's kind of an abrupt reversal from her. She was someone I had criticized a lot. I'm glad to hear that from her.
And so her recent post, she said, "In the coming days, we will see many governors and local leaders lift mask mandates. This is the right step and marks a needed shift from government-imposed requirement to individual decision."
That's great.
It helps preserve public health authority for when it's needed again. And I made this point way back at the very beginning of the pandemic about preserving public health authority. Preserving public health legitimacy is incredibly important, because if there is such a thing as public health, then you need officials who are trusted by the public to be able to share what is, from following the science, actually the smartest choices for individuals to make to benefit themselves and the public. And when they went so overboard in the very beginning, they shot a lot of their credibility. And so when people were closing all the parks, for instance, then when they come out and say, also when they tell lies, like masks don't work and so you shouldn't wear the mask, and it turns out they were lying about that so that people wouldn't hoard masks, although it does turn out that the KN95s and N95 is much better. So when you make those claims, you lose your credibility as a public health official. And so Wen is saying, don't force people to do things that aren't useful, because then it's more difficult in the future to get them to follow your advice. It's the boy who cried wolf. We all understand the boy who cried wolf. And so if Stacey Abrams were saying, look, it's time to end the mask mandates, the kids shouldn't be in masks, it inhibits their ability to learn, they can't hear the teacher effectively, which she understands intuitively because it was difficult for her to make herself heard. She is one of the most effective and practiced public speakers in the country. and it's difficult for her to be heard by children through a mask during story time. So for the typical teacher, it's going to be that much more difficult.
And you see this all the time. You see Democratic political figures, when they're in close conversation, they pull down the mask to be heard, which is exactly the environment where you actually want to be wearing the mask if you believe you need its protection. It's when you're in close conversation with people.
Yeah, at press conferences on Capitol Hill, if they can't hear you, they're like, so they have
closer, take down the mask. So then it just, which speaks to my fear that it's really just about tribal signaling. I'm wearing a mask to let you know who I voted for. Right. I'm wearing a mask to let you know I'm one of the good people. Not one of those bad people. I'm a good person. I have a mask.
Right. I'm for freedom or I'm against death. Those are the two things that you can signal with a mask.
But I'm for freedom, and death is not great. So it's
the rare pro-freedom, anti-death person.
Put me in the political alignment chart.
Death, freedom.
But I did just see that. So New Jersey governor is ending the school mask mandate. New Jersey. So this is Phil Murphy. Mm-hmm. This is from the New York Times. He's ending the statewide school mask mandate, and New Jersey has been one of the most aggressive COVID mitigation, one of the most not lockdown anymore, but one of the most firm states about following these things. They're saying it should be voluntary. I don't know when we'll get that in the District of Columbia, but
in D.C. for kindergarten classes, almost all of those kids are vaccinated at this point because they're 5 and over, and they're testing once a week because some of them are not vaccinated yet because not all of them are 5 and over, and so they're testing once a week and vaccinated and still wearing masks all day in class.
It's just absurd.
With case counts now in the dozens in DC.
It's just absurd. No one else, they have to do it. The children follow more aggressive measures than anyone else. There are a variety of circumstances where we're not masked right now. Right. We're not masked every day, for hours. There are so many environments where adults are not expected to be masked and are not masked, but children are still required in so many roughly equivalent scenarios, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Frustrates me. Well, I'll continue being frustrated, but I'm going to take a little breather, and then we'll be back with more Rising right after this.